You're listening to the Sex and Psychology Podcast, the sex ed you never got in school and won't get anywhere else. I am your host, Dr. Justin Lehmiller. I am a social psychologist and research fellow at the Kinsey Institute and author of the book, Tell Me What You Want, The Science of Sexual Desire and How It Can Help You Improve Your Sex Life. Consensual non-monogamy is often discussed in terms of communication, boundaries, and relationship agreements. But beneath all of that lies something deeper: our nervous systems, attachment patterns, and our past relationship experiences. In today's episode, we're going to explore what it means to approach non-monogamy through a trauma-informed lens and how emotional safety, consent, jealousy, and self-awareness all shape our intimate lives. Some of the topics we explore include what trauma-informed non-monogamy actually means, how non-monogamy can activate attachment wounds, signs that someone may be consenting to a relationship structure without feeling truly aligned internally, as well as how being more in touch with our bodies can help guide more informed relationship decisions. My guest is Kate Laree, a sex-positive psychotherapist, author, speaker, and podcast host specializing in trauma, relationships, sexuality, and non-traditional relationship structures. She works extensively with LGBTQIA, kink, and consensually non-monogamous communities, and is author of the book Open Deeply, a guide to building conscious, compassionate, open relationships. She also co-hosts the Open Deeply podcast with Sunny Megatron. This is going to be another fascinating conversation that you won't want to miss. Stick around and we're going to jump in right after the break. If you're looking to gain a broad understanding of human sexuality or refresh your knowledge, check out the next Human Sexuality Intensive at the Kinsey Institute. Participants will explore foundational concepts and recent developments across a range of topics related to human sexuality through an interdisciplinary, evidence-based lens. Topics will include sex, gender and sexuality, identity and intersectionality, sexual behavior and consent, dating and relationships, and more. This course is open to both emerging and established professionals looking to specialize their knowledge, as well as those seeking new career directions. Previous participants have come from all over the world, and those who successfully complete the program will receive a course certificate from the Kinsey Institute. The next intensives will be in May and June of this year. To learn more, visit kinseyinstitute.org or check the link in the show notes. Hi, Kate, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. So we're going to be discussing trauma-informed non-monogamy today. And that's a term that I'm guessing that many of my listeners have probably never heard before. So let's start there. What does it mean to approach consensual non-monogamy through a trauma-informed lens? And how is that maybe different from the way that people typically think about or approach consensual non-monogamy?
Well, first off, let's just imagine someone that wants to be non-monogamous, that they do have trauma. I want to just back up and just say that there's a lovely thing happening in certain non-monogamous circles where we're very much looking at culture. We're looking at Sex at Dawn talks about the agricultural revolution, how it started to control bodies and all that. So there's this whole layer to non-monogamy in certain circles that's really about freedom and agency and not letting dominator culture puppeteer us when we make our choices. But sometimes we can skew that direction so far that we're just saying yes to almost everything, our partner wants, because out of fear of controlling them, and we're not tracking our body and we're not honoring the fact that maybe we have some unresolved trauma. And so it becomes this process of threading the needle of holding these cultural injuries while also understanding our own injuries within our body and honoring both. And so that can get tricky in relationships and it can bring up arguments at times. But for the individual, part of it is loving yourself, right? And part of loving yourself when you have some unresolved trauma is getting in touch with your internal compass. Your mind, your thoughts can lie to you when they operate on their own. Your body and soma can lie to you when they operate on their own. But when you're in touch with your thoughts, your emotions, and your body sensations from a grounded, centered place, you can start to find your truth. And so obviously doing that takes being regulated. So sometimes our partners will come at us with a whole bunch of questions and things like that, and we want to make them happy. And sometimes we say yes when it's not a true yes. And if we keep doing that for, a year, 10 years, one day we'll notice that we have this generalized anxiety, this generalized anger in our body and wonder why. And a lot of times it's because we've said yes many times without it being a true yes. So part of being trauma informed is finding a way to slow down. And that's a whole conversation so that you can get in touch with your internal compass so that your consent is actually a true consent.
Thanks for explaining that. And that does explain where a lot of things sometimes go wrong for people who are approaching non-monogamy for the first time, because many of them want to move very quickly, right? And if you're moving very quickly, it's hard to really be in touch with yourself and be sure that you're making the choices and decisions that are right for you and your relationship circumstances at that particular point in time.
Completely. A lot of times when people are in their first year of non-monogamy, especially if they're excited, they go through a little bit of a frenzy. I mean, not everybody, but some people, and they will stack events. Like they'll have one event and they haven't even emotionally processed the first event until they're going to the second. And then at the end of the month, when they've gone to a whole bunch of things, they're wondering why they're screaming at each other.
Right.
It's like slow wins the race sometimes.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So, as we've discussed on the show many times before, non-monogamous relationships can surface attachment dynamics pretty quickly. And a situation that might seem objectively small, like let's say you get a delayed text from your partner, or you have a partner who expresses a lot of excitement about someone else, that can suddenly feel enormous emotionally. So, how can we tell whether we're reacting to that actual situation that's in front of us versus some old attachment wound that's been reactivated? How do we distinguish those things?
Well, we can borrow from what EMDR therapists do. That is like once we get into a good enough place, we might want to cool our jets, do some deep breathing, pet our cat or dog. And when we get into enough of a good place, while we still have that energy in our body, we can think about, so this is when you're an EMDR therapist, this is how you find a target. This is also how you can bridge back and find out if something's being triggered in your backstory. Mm-hmm. So think about the moment that you got upset. Think about what you were looking at in that moment. And you might have been staring at your feet. It doesn't matter. We're just trying to find a visual anchor. Then get in touch with that moment. It doesn't have to be that you fully get in touch with it. We don't want you to like go into a panic attack or dissociate. Just lightly get in touch with the moment. Where do you notice it in your body now as you think of the event then? What do you notice with your emotions coming up, like maybe fear or panic? What do you notice? And once you have the visual and what you are feeling and what you're sensing, then bridge back to the first or worst memory that comes up that feels somatically and emotionally similar. This is not about logic. So many people in non-monogamy land are very bright, but when it comes to this, your logic gets in the way. You have to turn off your brain, bridge back, and maybe you're getting triggered by a fear of abandonment, and all of a sudden this memory of your parents leaving you at the gas station or paying attention to other people instead of you on your birthday pops up, and you're like, oh, well, there's the root. And having the root can really inform how to help yourself now.
Yeah.
Once you have that root and you're like, oh, okay, yes, my abandonment that goes way back, and there's all these times where I felt abandoned is popping up. Now, what can I do to heal? And also not assuming that it's all you, because the question then becomes, how much is this my unresolved trauma? And how much is my partner being cavalier in some way? Maybe. Are they being disrespectful? Because a lot of people in non-monogamy just assume, they go into a shame spiral and just assume, oh, I'm being jealous, I'm being petty. Maybe there's some stuff that you need to work on, but also, is your partner being disrespectful in some way? And like holding both, noticing what is their responsibility, noticing what's yours. Once you recognize what's going on with you, then it may be just as light as bringing in, again, some internal family systems, language of like talking to your younger self or talking to that part of your body and being like, look, we're grown. We're not stuck back at age 6. We actually are grown. We have agency and we can make choices. You are not forced to do anything you don't want to. And we can talk to that small part and talk them down. But sometimes it's a somatic thing like deep breathing or getting a long hug from a friend. We can sense into what we need, or we might need EMDR or something deeper.
Yeah. So again, it's all about being very in touch with yourself and how you're feeling in your body and having that awareness. And we'll dive into that a little bit further as we go along. But I want to go back to something that you said originally when we were talking about what trauma-informed non-monogamy is. And you brought up the idea of consent and how sometimes people consent to things that maybe weren't truly consensual, right? Many people like to think of consent as being this simple thing, like where you either said yes or you said no, and that's that. But in relationships, it's more complicated than that. Sometimes we agree to things that we really don't want, or we push ourselves into dynamics that just don't feel emotionally safe because we're wanting to please a partner. We want to avoid conflict, or maybe we just want to seem open-minded. And, that can become especially complicated in non-monogamous relationships. So what are some signs that someone might be consenting to something while they're not feeling truly aligned or internally grounded?
So maybe let's talk about that on the relational level and also the somatic level.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once you start to track your body, which might be hard at first, like if you're a really heady person or you've struggled with dissociation, you can start out, if you can't get in touch with your body, by tracking for the positive when you go out in life. Like if somebody makes you laugh, where do you notice that in your body? If you get a long hug that feels really good, where do you notice that in your body? Once you start to have some body awareness, you also might notice the negative things like, oh, my partner just asked for something. I'm hearing myself say yes because I want to be a good partner, but I'm noticing a knife drive in my gut that I've ignored until now, that I pushed into my subconscious so fast in the past, I didn't even notice it. And now I am. And now what do I do with that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like the first step. Another step is getting over, and I've kind of touched on this, your shame. Because if you have shame about being, that you need to be good poly or feeling like you're failing at non-monogamy, those blocks will keep you from getting in touch with your body. And so there's all these aspects of getting in touch with your body. And when you first start to notice that knife drop or whatever it is, it can be terrifying because then it can make a person think, is my relationship going to end? All these things. Because what if I start to have a voice and my partner feels like this is not tenable? So that can be really scary. And that's a whole conversation. There's also kind of like the relational level. Like if you realize that you are an overgiver, and a lot of people in their childhood were trained left, right, and center, not only to be overgivers, but also to please, but not ask for anything themselves. That archetype oftentimes pairs up with overgivers, narcissists. It's not just narcissism. The overgiver can show up in many forms.
Mm-hmm.
And the overgiver just kind of oftentimes bleeds the other person dry, right? And so noticing the archetypes that are showing up in your relationship is important in order to start to take back your consent.
When it comes to this idea of somatic awareness and being really in touch with our bodies, that's something that some people find to be challenging because many of us spend our lives kind of being very stuck in our heads and we're not paying attention to the other sensations in our body. So I wondered if you had any tips that you could share with us on just sort of how we can kind of increase that somatic awareness. Like, for example, is engaging in mindfulness-based practices a pathway to kind of help to gain more somatic awareness?
First off, I have to say, I've been working with folks with trauma since my early 30s, and I'm in my 50s now. Back when I worked in hospital settings, a lot of times the person, when you told them to track their body, they'd look at you like you had two heads.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly the person that eventually would learn how to do it, and it would change their life. And so even if you're somebody who feels like you can't, it is a good thing to continue to try. Also, there's a difference between people that are neurodivergent and other folks. When you're neurodivergent, sometimes calming your body down, top down, is beneficial. What that might mean, and this works for a lot of people, is getting in touch with positive resources, and then your body will just calm down as a byproduct. They figured this out with war vets way before they figured this out with neurodivergent folks. That the war vet had several tours of duty. If you went into their body, they would totally get jacked up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you focused on positive resources, which a positive resource could be anything. It could be a beautiful vacation spot. It could be someone that really makes you feel loved. If you've had a really hard life, some people are like, Kate, I can't even think of any real positive resources. My grandma was nice to me part of the time, but sometimes she was awful. It can even be imaginary things like Captain Picard or, a Lord of the Rings setting, and when we get in touch with these things and then really connect to them. So not just like, I like sunshine, and then you get in touch with sunshine and you're like, it's not working. It's like really meditating on it. like meditating on that memory, like feeling it, feeling the ocean coming and touching your toes, feeling the sand under your body, feeling the warmth of the sun, hearing the seagulls, really allowing yourself to sink into it. And usually your body will follow suit into that place of calm.
When it comes to great sex, wetter is better. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to Soaking Wet from VB Health. It's the world's first probiotic specifically designed for vaginal and vulva health and wellness. Soaking Wet is a doctor-formulated blend of prebiotics, probiotics, and vitamins specifically designed to restore balance down there and increase lubrication. This isn't just about health, it's about pleasure. VB Health has a simple mission, creating supplements that actually work with scientifically backed ingredients. They take quality seriously too. Each batch that is produced is tested by 2 separate third-party laboratories for safety and effectiveness. They even share their third-party lab results publicly, which is rare. Make every encounter slipperier, sexier, and downright sensational. It's time to get soaking wet and keep those good times coming. Literally. And the best part? Soaking Wet is formulated by doctors at VB Health, and it works. Visit soakingwet.com and use code Justin for 10% off, or click the link in the show notes. So I want to talk about jealousy for a little bit because it's often framed as the ultimate obstacle in non-monogamy, but jealousy can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes it's insecurity, grief, fear, or unmet needs. And as some of my previous guests have mentioned, jealousy is information and we can learn something from it when it pops up. So how do you help people move away from seeing jealousy as something that they should try to suppress or simply get over, and instead treat it as something that's worth exploring with curiosity?
Before I answer that directly, let me just say this. What I've noticed over and over again is when I'm looking at 2 people in a relationship in session, when one person says, "You're just being jealous," it is such a easy way to make the other person shut down. I watch their shoulders come, fold in. I watch them fall silent. I watch them lose their voice. It's like, and couples learn how to shut down the other person. And that in non-monogamy land, that is the number one thing that is used either consciously or I think it's unconscious. I think unconsciously people learn these things. Mm-hmm. So sometimes instead of using the word jealousy, you might just say, "I sense that you're upset." Like the word upset is less of a trigger word within non-monogamy. Mm-hmm. And you're also allowing the person to label their upset because inside upset is like all these emotions, right? And so you're giving people their power back as well. So it kind of like benefits in 2 different ways. That's one way to invite a friendly discussion. So now the person isn't triggered and they've gotten their ownership back just by changing the word. But then also another thing that I find is that when people label an emotion, they say to their partner, "I can tell you're mad at me right now," or I can tell you're disgusted, right? Again, that triggers people when they're labeled. Instead, if you just say, "I can see that, you're furrowing your brow, like what's going on right now," or just noticing that your partner's tone has shifted. "I'm just wondering what's going on." Then the person is more likely to think about it. If you say, "I'm mad, I can tell you're mad," then the other person is more likely to go, "I'm not mad." And then a fight is happening, right? Mm-hmm. The same thing with the word jealousy. Recognizing the facial expressions. And then from that place, the other person is more likely to look inward and go, "Oh, I am furrowing my brow. Why am I doing that?" And then they are more likely to open up a discussion and have their defenses lowered. Also, I think doing that bridge back that I discussed earlier can help people recognize what is getting triggered and create more of a safe environment. Recognizing that jealousy is, like a suitcase and we can open it up and inside are all these other emotions. It's not just one emotion. There's all these things inside. And when we open up that suitcase, we can get curious and notice what's inside. Mm-hmm. The main thing, I think, is having a good communication model when you discuss things. One thing that you see all the time is people, if they do get as far as to learn a relationship model, most of them, like the imago dialogue or nonviolent communication, they're lovely, but none of them say, "Oh, by the way, if you're dysregulated in your body, none of this is going to work," which most people are dysregulated in their body. And that's why with my EPIC communication model, I just weave in somatic grounding before during, after any kind of hard conversation. Because if you don't stay regulated, you're not going to be able to talk about jealousy. And that's one of the primary things that happens in conversations. It should be a through line. And some people say, well, I shouldn't have to manage your regulation. So that's a whole conversation. But honestly, it's like we can do things to regulate ourselves and we can do things to regulate our partner. It's oftentimes a good thing to have that discussion when you're in a calm place. Like, what can I do when you get upset that you think you might like? When you're like at a 6, you can get to a point in an upset where you get to the point where you're like, don't touch me. But usually somatic touch is one of the quickest way to calm someone's body so that you can continue to talk about something that's upsetting like jealousy.
What you're explaining, I've found to be true in my own relationship, right? Because if you're trying to have a discussion about any type of conflict area and you're already at like this 7, 8, or 9 on the scale emotionally, it usually never goes anywhere good. It's not productive. And you're right. You have to be regulating yourself, but also making an attempt to regulate your partner. And I think that's what's called co-regulation, right? And it's really important when you're having these conversations that you're present and you're paying attention to each other, you're being empathetic, and you're making an attempt to calm rather than to just add more agitation to the mix, because it just never works well when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many things regarding jealousy. We could talk about that for episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Forever. And again, I think there's so much shame around that. I think one thing is choosing your partner as well. If you have a partner that's shaming you for your upset, then that's something to look at. When we choose our partners, it's not just about choosing a non-monogamous partner. It's about choosing a partner that's non-monogamous in a way that works with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you find in relationships is everything goes swimmingly when I can love myself well while concurrently loving you well. When it goes poorly, it's when I can love myself well, but you feel thrown under the bus, or I can love you well and I feel thrown under the bus. That's where people get in trouble. So as much as possible, if you can choose someone that operates within non-monogamy in a similar way, the more you're going to be able to have these uncomfortable discussions without one or both people catastrophizing or getting mad or threatening to leave, et cetera, and so on.
You're right that we could talk about jealousy for days. And I think it's an important topic to bring up in the context of consensual non-monogamy, because there are a lot of people who seem to think that jealousy doesn't exist or shouldn't exist in these relationships. And that if jealousy does emerge, that there's a problem with you and that you're not cut out for or fit for non-monogamy. And the reality is that jealousy can and does happen in any type of relationship. We need to learn and find ways to deal with it and productively, but it's something that a lot of us just don't feel very equipped to do. But, when you're somebody who is consensually non-monogamous and you have this belief that, jealousy shouldn't exist, then that can create shame, because now you're not just feeling jealousy, but you've got that layer of shame piled on top of it, and it makes it even harder.
Exactly. I'm not a super jealous person, but one thing that I'll say is if both people are non-monogamous, it makes things easier. It's so much harder when one person is non-monogamous and the other person is monogamous to that person.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my past relationships, there might be a time that I feel jealous or all up in my feelings, and I might want to get cavalier or self-righteous with my feelings. But then I always check myself and go, I know that someday I might be the one to screw up, or I might be the one that wants to have more freedom. And if I haven't given them grace, if I haven't really checked my own emotions, then they're not going to give me grace. When you're both non-monogamous and you have that ability to step back and realize that if I don't manage my own stuff, then I'm not going to get the same grace. I think that's a key part of feeling like it's worth it to figure out how to manage yourself.
Absolutely. So a concept that you mentioned that I think is really important is positive affect tolerance, which is another term that I suspect many of my listeners have probably never heard before. And when we think about people struggling to tolerate difficult emotions, like that's one thing, but people also can struggle to experience and accept positive emotions. So can you explain what positive affect tolerance is and how that shows up in non-monogamy?
Absolutely. So if you were to Google it, you might hear it defined a little bit differently. This is the way I describe it and how it was taught to me a long, long time ago. in our culture, we are rewarded for having an ability to tolerate negative things. All you have to do is look at an action adventure movie and watch our hero get shot 30 times and he's still walking. And we're like, you're amazing, right? But we don't think about the fact that being able to tolerate love actually is really difficult, especially if you have a trauma history. So you can see it with people that can't even tolerate a compliment, right? So how are you going to tolerate multiple people loving you well if you can't even tolerate a compliment? And so what happens when you can't tolerate the yumminess of life, if you haven't built up your tolerance for positivity, is that a lot of times you unconsciously push things away. And that can look subtle or it can be big. When I first started working on this in my 30s, again, over 20 years ago, I was looking at it from a big lens. I was noticing my partner who had a massive trauma history. After a beautiful anniversary, 2 days later, he finds some random thing to have a huge fight about. And then what that would do is shift the relationship to a lower intimacy level that he was unconsciously comfortable with based on his trauma history, right? So I started noticing it in these big ways. But then I started noticing it in my 40s at the micro level with myself, where a partner would just attune with me in just this beautiful way that was beyond my comfort level. And all of a sudden I was popping up and going, can I get you a drink? Oh, I have to go to the bathroom, or like some random thing. And I got to the point where I would just say to my partner, I just hit a positive affect tolerance wall. I want to lean into how yummy and wonderful you're being in this moment. And can we redo this moment? And I've never had a partner not love that. Like they feel honored. They're like, wow, I can't believe you're able to be that honest with me. And yes, we can do a redo. So within non-monogamy, there's all these different moments. It could be going to a swing lifestyle party where everyone's telling us that we're so charming or sexy or beautiful, and we get that feedback all night long. It could be that we're poly and we've got 3 lovers that all think we're amazing, and we've never had that in our life. And yeah, it can make us feel like a little dolly that's about to burst at the seams. But just like when you go to the gym and you don't start out with a 100-pound weight, you might start with a 5-pound weight. You can find ways to slowly build up to it, right? And again, it can be on your own, tracking somatically for the positive, noticing when the child makes you laugh. Where do you notice in your body? And staying with that longer, or even bringing your partners into it and saying to your partner, I'm trying to build up my positive affect tolerance. Can you hug me longer? I'm going to sink into it. I'm going to quit thinking about my grocery list or how my grandma was mean to me when I was 5. I'm going to be present and just really breathe and notice how good you smell and notice your kiss on my neck. And I'm just going to track how my body feels. And when my body wants to jump and spring away, I'm going to see if I can sink into it 5 seconds longer.
I think what you just described there is something that will resonate with a lot of people. Many of us have been there before in a lot of different types of situations, both romantic relationships and in other things in daily life, where it's hard to accept compliments and praise. And and it's nice, you're getting these compliments and praise, but it's you don't know what to do with them, and you just can't believe them for some reason because there's something deeper inside of you that feels like you're not worthy of it. And so, yeah, I can totally relate to that, and I'm sure a lot of other people can too.
Oh yeah, it's so common, and it can start right there. It's okay, what do you need to do when somebody just gives you one compliment? Again, you might want to notice what's going on in your body. There's probably maybe a twinge or a tightening that is holding an internal family systems part, like a little girl or a little boy that is saying, well, if I lean into this love, what if they leave? What if they die? What if they turn out to be a liar? And again, you can talk to that small part and just be like, it's okay, we're grown and we can find ways to take care of ourselves and be kind and gentle rather than going into a shame spiral and feeling like you're failing at love.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this information, Kate. It was a pleasure to chat with you, and I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation in the next episode and talking all about how to know if non-monogamy is right for you.
That sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to it.
Can you please tell my listeners where they can go to learn more about you and your work and get a copy of your book?
So my website is kateloree.com. So Kate is easy, last name Loree. You can find my book Open Deeply wherever books are found, definitely on Amazon. But I really love it when people actually buy my book from small booksellers because we need to keep them afloat and alive.
Yes, we do. I'll be sure to include links to all of that in the show notes. Thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. To keep up with new episodes of this podcast, visit my website, Sex and Psychology, at sexandpsychology.com, or subscribe on your favorite platform, where I hope you'll take a moment to rate and review the show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please consider becoming a Sex and Psychology Premium subscriber to enjoy ad-free listening for just $3.99 a month. You can also follow me on social media for daily sex research updates. I'm on Blue Sky and X at Justin Lehmiller and Instagram at Justin J. Lehmiller. Also, be sure to check out my book, Tell Me What You Want. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.